Hello, APS faculty. Well, welcome back to work. I hope you had an incredible summer. I was actually fortunate enough to head to Alaska with my family to visit my cousin there. She lives in Anchorage with her family. It was absolutely amazing. And I also kind of met a major milestone this summer. I'm going to need therapy from everybody when I see you. I also sent my youngest child off to Oberlin College, so I am now an official empty nester. The superintendent also sent his youngest off to the University of Akron, so we've both been living kind of in this whole world of college and career preparation, wondering if our kids are going to be successful in their careers. Are they prepared for college? It makes me think, obviously, a lot about what we should be doing in K-12 education to make these transitions to college or the military or a career seamless. This summer, we also spent a lot of time planning for the new school year, as you can imagine, and running summer school. Last night, I actually entertained some out-of-town relatives from Atlanta, and my spouse's uncle asked me whether I worked all year during the summer. And I said, yeah, I don't get time off during the summer. I work all year. And then he said, he kind of looked at me like, what in the world would you be doing during the summertime? So I told him that we actually, in the summertime, it feels more like our tax season as accountants. Like it's the busiest time of year for us because we're doing two things. One is all the planning to launch the next school year. And then the second thing is really trying to look at our summer programming. We run summer school. We actually serve more kids during our summer school than all the districts in this three-county area serve during their regular school year. So our summer school is bigger than their entire district. And our summer school has become very innovative. Our secondary intervention summer school with at-risk students, they were doing problem-based learning units out at the park system and getting kids out in businesses and doing a lot more career exploration. It's been wonderful to watch the success that we've had. We had another wonderful, successful year with our third grade guarantee summer school and our pre-fall. So I appreciate all of the teachers that are so dedicated that they shorten their summer off and come in and continue to serve our students. So in this opening school video, I want to talk through three things to get you prepared for the new school year. The first thing is I want everybody to gain an understanding of kind of what is the next level of work for the district in 2017-18 based on where we landed in the spring. And then the second thing is I want you to be able to identify the changes and trends in the state and district level assessments. There's been quite a few shifts at the state level that I want to go through with you on some assessment changes that really are going to impact everybody. And then the third thing, I want you to talk through some of our summer work around our own streamlining of the cycle of our curriculum-based PLC assessments so that you can understand what this is going to look like as we go through our five-step process with our PLCs this year. So first, let's kind of talk about this year ahead and what is our next level of work. Your SIP team is going to spend time with you during the Instructional Improvement Day to have you review your spring data specific to your building and the report card results to finalize your 90-day plan for the year. When we look at our district-wide report card results, we saw continued positive trends, particularly at the elementary grades and subjects. The good news for all you elementary folks out there is that 82%, let me say that again, 82% of our grades and subjects improved on the report card this past year, which is terrific. And just as I've shown everyone, and we did this at the convocation last year, The elementary, every single year we continue to see students ending up more and more at grade level, and that trend has just continued, that we're seeing those increases in our elementary grades and subjects across reading, math, social studies, science. Everything seems to be clicking along well. At the middle school level, it was about 50-50. 50% of the grades and subjects improved, 50% didn't. We're assuming that as we continue to see those early grades improve, then we'll start to really see that pick up at the middle school as well. And the more we move towards our college and career academy focus, more STEM kind of based instructional strategies, problem-based learning, we're anticipating that to continue to increase. The challenging thing at the high school level this year, and we're still working through this data and we'll get it to the high school folks, the state, in its infinite wisdom on the report card, it didn't just take the first time test takers at the high school, our end of course exams, and give us those results. They combined all the retakes, and the students who are the older students who are under OGT who took the end of course exam, they threw in all those results together. So we are working to pull those out so that I can then share with everyone how did we actually do compared to last year. So I can't tell you right now what those results look like. In your building, you'll be able to look at that with your principal and SIP on this Instructional Improvement Day, and through this next month we'll continue to talk about it. Our value-added results aren't here yet. Those come within the next 2 to 3 weeks, so I'll give you that update as soon as we get that. So what does the data tell us that we need to keep working on moving into this year that we'll go ahead and put in place? Number one really is to stay the course. Go deeper and focus on quality. The second thing is to continue to fine-tune our PLC and our SIP process. One of the things that I'm going to be working with teams of teachers and my own staff over the next few months is to really figure out how we can maximize the time in PLC on sharing strategies versus the maximum amount of time on data analysis and getting the form right. I've definitely heard plenty of feedback that we spend so much time on that there's not a lot of time to share best practices and strategies. And I want to work with all the teachers out there to figure out and bring in teams from different grade levels and content areas to figure out how we can do that and roll something out for second semester. The next thing is the third kind of focus for this year is all around expanding innovation, teacher leadership, teacher and principal kind of autonomy to innovate. I want to continue this year to figure out how do we give that flexibility for teachers and principals to really be able to take that leadership and try out new things that maybe don't fit kind of the standard practice that we have. And kind of the last thing for us to focus on this year is refining our climate, and it kind of goes into expanding the student voice and leadership. And figuring out, continuing our work, where we actually added climate to our 90-day plan for us to look at how do we expand that student leadership and student voice going into this year. That's going to be really important as we launch our college and career academies. So with our college and career academies, kind of look for, and this is just a high-level summary, and then every Instructional Improvement Day, K-12, actually pre-K through 12, you're going to be hearing strategies and training every single PD and Instructional Improvement Day through the year. You're going to be getting information about how we're kind of shifting our district to this college and career academy focus. So what you'll start to see is college and career advising built into the school day, into our content areas, where students will get more deliberate advising using our career cruising software. The second thing you'll hear is doing more training on STEM instructional strategies like problem-based learning. How do you infuse more digital literacy now that we have our one-to-one devices? You'll also hear a lot about these expanded partnerships that we have with groups like United Way and Connexus and SEI and the Business Chamber and GAR. And we're going to begin finalizing all the partners for all of our college and career academies at the high school level. So watch for that, listen for that, know that that's kind of what's happening through the year at each of the instructional improvement days this year. The rest of the session this morning with you, though, is I wanted to kind of launch the new school year. There's been a lot of changes in assessments from the state. Finally, after all these years, you know, normally I'm standing here telling you some of the kind of tough news to hear from the state about changes every single year in assessments. We actually have the Department of Education and the state superintendent are now hearing all of the flood of feedback from teachers and principals and administrators like me and parents saying there's been too many assessments and it's overwhelming and something has to change. So there have been some significant changes since I saw you last spring that I need to talk through with you. And we're going to talk about kind of 5 changes that have happened that we're going to go through that'll impact literally every single teacher in the district. So we're going to go through those 5 and you'll be able to kind of follow along in the PowerPoint so that you have this very specific information. So I picked this quote from John F. Kennedy to start this session on change. Particularly, we're going to focus on assessment changes because change is sort of the law of life, particularly in education. It seems like we've had lots of changes year to year. But like I said, the positive change now is that we're seeing more of a streamline in assessments and honing into maybe more the priorities needed for us moving forward. So I'm going to go over 5 changes, but know that these are all movements that we see collectively as positive changes. So there's 5 areas of significant change that I want to talk through. The first one is we're going to be adding a couple indicators that we start paying attention to that we haven't in the past with milestones that we're hoping to get students to achieve. So I want to go through that. Second thing, very significantly, is that the state changed just for the class of 2018 graduation requirements. And I'll say that probably 20 times. This is only for the class of 2018 as a transition and bridge year for this group of students that are meeting new graduation requirements for the first time. The third change is there have been some state assessment changes on OSTs, and we'll cover those. The fourth thing is student growth measure changes. There have been some adjustments because of some of the state changes in our OTES measures. And the fifth thing is kind of a timeline on making some adjustments in our PLC assessments. So those are the 5 areas we'll cover. The first thing is I want to introduce a concept today around how we think about the key milestones for our students as they progress, really as they walk in our doors in kindergarten and then progress all the way through graduation and launching into a college or career focused plan after graduation. So there's a group in town called Summit Education Initiative that's an education think tank group that works with every single district in the county to help look at our data and map out specific strategies to move indicators, the ones you're seeing on the screen, from kindergarten all the way through post-high school. You're going to see this more and more over these next 3 to 5 years because we're going to really embrace these key indicators, because what SEI did is they did the research for us to look at what were the key milestones that we should focus on to kind of give those early indicators of success after high school in either college, career, or the military. So things like kindergarten, we already know that if a student walks in our door on track on the kindergarten reading assessment or the readiness assessment, we already know they have a high likelihood of success in college and career after they graduate. Same thing in third grade. If they're reading on track in third grade, the predictor is that they'll be successful in college and career. And then the pipeline just keeps going. The next big indicator is eighth grade math. If students score advanced or accelerated on the OST in eighth grade, then they have a high likelihood of success transitioning to college or straight into some kind of post-secondary training for a career. Then ninth grade, if students at the end of ninth grade earn 6.5 credits, earn a B average, and what's interesting is their research has found that if students miss no more than 8 days, then they will be highly likelihood of success in this post-graduation and transition to college and career. And then lastly, if students in 12th grade, if they have a plan upon graduation, if they hit a 21 on the ACT, and if they earn industry credentials while they're in high school, then they're predicted to have success in college and career. So today is just an introduction of this, because you're going to keep seeing this. Our Tableau reports will start to kind of organize around these key milestones over these next few years. Okay, the second significant change is regarding graduation requirements, and this is only for the class of 2018. And this is actually an exciting change, and the reason why I'm having everybody, elementary, middle, and high, hear about these changes is because I'm hoping this is actually a predictor for future years, not just for the class of 2018. So what happened is our state superintendent convened a group, an advisory group that our own Superintendent James served on, to look at the class of 2018. This is the first class that is falling under the new graduation requirements that our state legislature rolled out with our end-of-course exams and having to earn 18 points to graduate. The problem was, across the state, there were a lot of kids who were not on track to meet those requirements. At some point, they were thinking that it was going to be about 65% of the students across the state would meet the requirements and the rest would not. And it scared everybody. It scared us, and it scared districts across the state. So the state legislature passed a law that provided kind of a stopgap measure just for this class of 2018 to have some additional ways to graduate, instead of solely based on test scores. The good news, and remember I told you these changes that I'm going through today are actually good news items. What's wonderful, and this was huge influence from David James, our superintendent, they were able to get things that actually represent more of a well-rounded education for students. But the first thing, and let me show you kind of how this steps out. The first thing, there's 2 additional options for kids to be able to graduate only, again, class of 2018, this is only for this year, but we're hoping some of these continue. The first thing is, all of the high school students in the class of 2018, the seniors, they do have to take all the high school courses, and if they scored a 1 or a 2, which are the lowest score levels, they do have to retake the end-of-course exams again. So that's kind of the first thing. And now let's take a look at what other ways that students can earn additional points towards graduation. So after students have taken the end-of-course exams, and then they have retaken them if they scored a 1 or a 2, then this list of conditions come into place. So if a student still hasn't earned the 18 points towards graduation, then they need to meet 2 of the following 9 conditions by the end of their senior year. So for example, a student could have earned 15, 16 points on the end of course exams. And if they meet 2 of these conditions, so for example, if they had 93% attendance during their senior year and they complete a capstone senior project, it doesn't matter how many points they earned on their end of course exams. If they meet 2 of any of these 9 conditions that you see listed, they'll be eligible to graduate. And if you look at this list, if you think of what we're doing with college and career academies in this district, this is completely aligned with what we're trying to accomplish. You know, there's in-demand industry credentials on this list. The capstone is a part of our academies, so that makes sense. The 120 hours of work experience and community service, I mean, that all is aligned with what we're doing anyway. So if we can be successful this year and keep showing the state how these are actually the most important conditions for our students, these types of experiences, to make them well-rounded graduates rather than just test scores on end-of-course tests that really don't tell you everything about whether a student is ready to walk into college or to walk into a career or military. Then the state also added a second alternative pathway, again, only for the class of 2018, and this is specifically for students who are in a career technical training program within our district. So the way this one works is, again, you have to take all the required high school courses and take the required end-of-course exams, but you'll notice it doesn't say that you're required to retake the end-of-course exams. The third piece is that you have to complete a department-approved career technical training program, which the way they're equating that is that's 4 career technical courses. So as long as the career education student has taken the required courses, taken the end-of-course exam just one time, and are enrolled in, have already taken or will have taken 4 career education courses, then the requirement under this second alternative pathway is they just have to complete one of the following items listed, which is they're proficient or better on their web exams, earning 12 points for industry credentials, and 250 hours of workplace participation. So it's similar to the alternative pathway. The first one is you sort of have to do something around the tests and courses first. And then the second piece is meeting an additional, some additional way of demonstrating that you're ready to graduate. Both of these alternative pathways align beautifully with our academies, and our superintendent is going to be continuing on the state advisory with the state superintendent to look at. By January, they're going to make recommendations for the next class of 2019. So you'll hear a lot more about this, especially the high school teachers. You're going to get a lot more detail about these pathways. The counselors will have a lot more information. We worked all summer on creating tracking reports so that we can see how kids are meeting either this alternative pathway number 1 or the second alternative pathway. The third change I wanted to talk about are the state assessment changes. And again, these are positive changes. Finally, we're seeing our state superintendent, Paulo Di Maria, and our state legislature, they're definitely listening and taking in all of the feedback, which has been quite a chorus or maybe a storm from parents and teachers and administrators and superintendents about the amount of testing, the overload, and the need to streamline the assessments in the state of Ohio. So the state superintendent put together an advisory group similar to the one I just told you about that our superintendent served on for graduation. This was an assessment advisory, and they brought recommendations to our state superintendent, DeMaria, and he took those, and then he gave a whole set of recommendations to the state legislature and the state board. The state made some changes, and there's some good, significant changes. Our state superintendent actually recommended more streamlining and more changes, but our legislature didn't take all of his recommendations. But they did agree to continue to study and look through this fall to potentially make more changes for the 2018-19 school year. So let me show you the kind of phase one changes that happen now that, again, are very positive movement from the state. And I know you don't often hear me say that, so I want to make sure you take note. So the first one is the kindergarten readiness assessment. This is more of a minor change that they do permit now that we can give the KRA before school. So we'll look at that for next year. And there's also some field test items that are added into the KRA for this year that we'll have to report on. The bigger changes come in the primary grades, grades 1 through 3. The state eliminated the math and writing diagnostics that fell during grades 1 through 3. So those are just eliminated. Then in grade 4 and 6, the state also eliminated, our state legislature eliminated the grade 4 and 6 social studies OST. And in doing that, they said it's eliminated, but they did say the districts still have to do some kind of formative or summative assessment in social studies in those grades. Our plan for this year is to use a DAP kind of test at the same time that we're giving the rest of our DAPs at the end of the first semester. So 4th and 6th grade teachers, just watch for that, and we'll give you more details as we go through this first semester. Those are the state changes. Now I want to shift gears towards the student growth measure changes. Okay, now we're on to the fourth change. I hope everybody is hanging in there with these changes, but now we're to the fourth change. This is the student growth measure changes. And this isn't actually something that they just came up with this summer. This has been part of the law for years, that as we transition to new state assessments, the Ohio Department of Education kind of mapped out this type of sequence. So here's what's happening as we move into this year. If everybody remembers, once the state introduced all of our new OSTs and our new end-of-course exams, ODE at the same time suspended many of the consequences of the tests. And that, the suspension included kind of the consequences that happen from the report card, and in terms of impacts for districts, all of that was sort of suspended, and for teachers in the 14-15 school year, the 15-16, and 16-17 school year. As a result of that, when they suspended the consequences, safe harbor rules were put into effect that basically suspended the use of teacher-level value-added reporting in their teacher evaluations. And it also was suspended for the report cards. So that was good, that was appreciated, that was a positive move from the state. But that 3-year safe harbor is now over. We're at that point, and I can't believe it doesn't even feel like it was that long ago. But for this current school year, safe harbor rules are no longer in effect. So let me kind of explain what that means. Teachers who administered state tests last year, the OSTs and the end-of-course exams, and if you completed the roster verification process in May, you will receive value-added reports, okay, for this school year. We anticipate those reports to be released by early December. If a teacher, one of you, receives a report, Ohio law requires the use of value-added ratings for your student growth measures component of the OTES evaluation. So just like in years past, if you are using or in a grade and subject using value added and they're listed on this slide, you must use that value added score as part of your evaluation. So if you look at the slide for 17-18, it's the same subjects except for a couple changes. American government is added. And then obviously I just told you about the social studies grade 6 was eliminated. So that is taken off the list of required value added. But everything else listed under teacher level value added reporting, you must use those results for your evaluation. The use of the value added reporting in OTES, this is going to change the SLO process for many teachers. Some teachers will no longer need to create an SLO. Other teachers will actually have both an SLO and a value-added rating used for their student growth measure. This new change is going to apply to teachers who teach both state-tested courses and untested courses as the majority of their schedule. What we've done under the guidance of Keith Lichty, we created a growth measure flow chart to eliminate some of the confusion, and it's linked right to this slide. And there's the QR code that you can capture the actual flow chart. And Keith also made a video that's also linked to this slide to help you determine whether you need to write an SLO this year or not. So tap into both of those resources, and obviously the whole testing office that Keith is now the interim testing manager this year. That whole office will help support you through this SLO shift and student growth measure shift this year. Okay, related to these student growth measures, and this actually kind of extends a little bit beyond the growth measures. When you think of how we use MAP and DAP in the district, and DAP, for the new teachers out there, that stands for District Assessment Program. Those are just assessments that we generate that are linked to the state assessments and anchored as curriculum-based measures. We've decided, based on a lot of feedback from teachers over the years really, but going into this past year, now that the state has end of course exams, the use of MAP at the high school level didn't seem as connected as shifting the high school courses all to DAPs, which are really more assessments that kind of look and feel more like the state assessments. So for this coming school year, we're not going to be using MAP anymore at the high school level. Now remember, high school teachers in those in English and math, you're already kind of shifted to value added for OTES, but we're also just not going to use MAP at the high school level for any kind of monitoring of growth over time. So MAP won't be used anymore. We're going to shift to DAPs at the high school level. You'll see that reflected on the district assessment calendar that we have linked right here on this slide. It's also on our hub page. If you go to the School Improvement Hub page under testing, there's a whole section for the assessment calendar. You'll see where the MAP and the DAPs fall into the calendar for this school year. And the last change is looking at our own district PLC assessments. When we think about the cycle of our assessments, philosophically what we've tried to do, because we are required by the state to do our 5-step process in our PLCs and use data kind of pre and post and look at how kids are progressing. When we look at our own best practices around that, sort of despite where the state falls for the 5-step process, if we kind of step away from that and just look as a district, What we've tried to always do is anchor our PLC assessments in our curriculum-based measures so that when you're working through your curriculum, you pause, you give an assessment based on what you just taught. Because of the changes from the state with assessments and looking at what we need to do moving forward, I asked my staff to start looking at ways that we can kind of spread out the frequency of the assessments and get everybody more on a cycle of every 8 to 9 weeks or so, maybe 7 to 9 weeks, of having a post-assessment. Rather than in some grades and some subjects, it's every 4 weeks or every 5 weeks, and it's kind of a quicker turnaround. I really wanted to get everybody more into this quarterly kind of concept so that a PLC 5-step process can stretch all the way for 8 to 9 weeks. And to also look real hard, based on the feedback from a lot of teachers that have talked to me this past year, and we started making these shifts mid-year, we started shifting a little bit away from always having kind of this full-blown PLC assessment for the pre-test. It's a little bit more important in math, not as important in ELA, to have a pre-test happen right after you give a post-test. For math, the subjects or the topics are so separate that there might be more rationale there. But what we've done this summer, once the state made their shifts and assessments, we sat down and started to look at how we wanted to modify and streamline and get to more of a quarterly process and pull back on such frequent PLC-based assessments. And we have some recommendations now that you all are back and that teachers are back. We want to convene our literacy and math pyramid teams to take a look at some recommendations around what this assessment cycle would look like more quarterly. And we also want to do open sessions for all teachers to come in and by content area and take a look at the recommended kind of changes. There's not huge changes for social studies and science. It's some of the recommended changes are mostly for ELA and math, but we wanted everyone. So you see on the slide we have some input sessions. Once the literacy and math pyramid teams get to take a look at the changes, then we'll open this up for everyone to come in and give feedback. And then by September 15th, in time for us to put something together for the end of the month September staff meeting, we'll roll out kind of what, based on everybody's input, what the cycle of the 5-step process PLC assessments would look like. And we'll embed them just like we have these past few years. We'll embed it in the teaching timelines to show where that would flow. With, again, the ultimate goal of kind of streamlining, getting everyone more towards a quarterly based system so that we can do similar to what the state has now done, where they're pulling back on kind of the frequency of the assessments. So stay tuned for that. And I just want to close with one more slide about kind of this pre-assessment, especially while we're revising these assessments, our 5-step PLC assessments. What do we do in the meantime to start school? Since last year we had a lot of pre-assessments that were required. So let me kind of end this session with that. So obviously the key question is, what PLC pre-assessments are required by the district in September? And the answer is actually none right now. While we're making these revisions to our teaching timelines and our shifting more to a quarterly kind of system, at least that's what we're recommending and hoping to get all of your feedback on that, I decided that it's best for us to not require any pre-assessment these first few weeks of school to start and kind of launch your PLC. Now, that means not require some standard district pre-assessment across each of the grades and subject areas. You do have MAP and DAP. Everybody now in the district is doing MAP or DAP at the beginning of the year, so you'll have that data that you can look at once it's been administered in these first few weeks of school. So those are still required. So use that data and go into Tableau. Your SIP team's going to be doing that, but you can pull data on your students to see where they ended in the spring so that you can go ahead and use that data, as well as obviously any kind of pre-assessments that you would normally do as a high-quality teacher to kind of gauge your new kids sitting in front of you on where they are. So using the spring data, using your MAP and DAP results, analyzing those, anything you give in the classroom, obviously you can plan your differentiated groups to launch the school year. You know, you have that flexibility to give any kind of pre-assessment, and that's the best practice, but that's your flexible way to do that at the beginning of the year instead of us saying that everyone has to give a Math Excel pretest or some kind of benchmark assessment for ELA and elementary to launch the school year. So those are the 5 significant changes related to assessments and graduation from the state. I appreciate the fact that you hung in there because I know that was a lot of content, but I hope you can appreciate why it was important for me to roll that out so that everybody's hearing the same thing. One of the things that I always hear feedback on is that sometimes when I or some of my staff share information to principals, coaches, or teams of teachers, and then they go back and share it, sometimes that message gets a little bit wackadoo as you're going through down to the teacher level. So that's why I wanted to give you the information directly from me on these rather substantial changes. Know that I really want your feedback on the PLC assessments as we look more at that quarterly shift to kind of slow down the frequency of assessment. So please come into those open sessions that are listed on that one slide so we can get your feedback. I will also be out and about over the next 2 weeks visiting schools, so stop me. Let me know what you're thinking about the changes that I've gone through. And also just shoot me an email. I'm here to serve you. That's kind of why I get up every single day to come to this district. This is my 30th year. My 30th year in this district, and I wouldn't choose any other district ever to go to because this is a phenomenal district. But that kind of feedback loop directly with me or to my staff so that we hear what you're thinking, the faculty, you're the most important folks in this district. So please reach out to me, and literally you can just shoot me an email or give me a call to let me know your thoughts about any of those 5 changes, including the graduation changes that I started off with. Have a wonderful start to the school year. Bring joy to the kids as they come in the door. Make sure that first day just rocks the world for them so that they know how excited you are that they're back. And I'll see you soon.